Yep.
Welcome to the Struggle Bubble. I'm Chad Cutting.
And I'm your co-host,
Yep.
Craig
Yep.
Sergi, and today we have a special guest, Yousuf Khan, a friend of mine, known in the industry in Silicon Valley in the tech bubble, and I'm super excited to talk about his career path. Obviously, we both have a different accent to the native Californians, so intrigued to learn more about the transition from the mighty nation of Great Britain to the. Actually, you're an official American now. I forgot about that.
I became a citizen a
Right.
couple of years ago. So yes, although I'm still a royal subject of His Majesty the King.
I
Uh,
love it.
proud, still a proud Brit, but even prouder American. So yeah.
There you go. So that was a nice introduction straight into Yusuf. So again, thank you for joining us. Very privileged. I know you're an extremely busy man. So yeah, I'd love to just kick us off, and we'll go from that transition from the Royal Highness now, so into you know the life of Californian USA based.
Happy to tell you how I got here. If that's a good starting
Would
point.
absolutely, and I think we talk about this all the time of um the people we know in our lives and work with, and there's a lot of expats, right? There's a lot of us that not just from the the British Isles, but also all over the nation. The Chad's from Ohio comes into California. There's friends from Canada that came into. There's so many of us in this Silicon Valley bubble, and
Yeah.
it's always great to hear people's experiences, how they got there, and as we say, the struggle, right? Because it is sometimes a struggle, right? Did I get my visa? Did I not get my visa? Can I? All these variations that in our world is so we know about them because we've lived them, and it's in your own head. You're one step away from where you want to get, and there's some things out there that just don't align, and you have to move, you have to shift. So love to start there, how you got into the middle of the valley, we'll call it.
Yeah, totally. Well, so amazing to see you again, and I've really enjoyed you and us collaborating over time. So and learned a ton from you and our experiences, both on the technical side as well as personal. So thank you right off the bat for that. Yeah, look, I've grew up all over the world. I moved to California in 2014. And had taken a job as a CIO of a company called Qualys, and it was actually kind of crazy, to be honest with you, the story. And there's a couple of lessons that sort of came from that. So I lived in London for 20 plus years. I was a CIO of a higher education company. I was traveling all over the world. I had a team in San Francisco that I used to frequently visit every few months. So I built up a few people I knew here from the industry. And unfortunately, I had a management change. And so I showed up at work in September of 2013. And unfortunately, I was told, we're making some changes. And unfortunately, we, don't no longer require services. And that was hard for me. I will not lie. That was one of so the funny thing is, I was probably going to leave anyway, and I actually had drafted up a resignation letter, and so I'm not joking. I actually drafted it up. I printed it out because that's what I did. You actually formally, I'm not going to do an email, etc. And I never got to present it because the good news was it was like, well, here's some severance, etc. I said, oh well, okay, I'll just put that letter right back in my pocket. Thank you very much, and sounds good. Saying that, look, at the time, I can laugh about it. At the time, it was very hard,
Stressful for sure.
very stressful. It hurts one's ego. Um, I'd never gone through it before. I play it straight up. I work my tail off, and want to be able to do good work. So this is just not something I had experienced. But I'll say it is the best thing that ever happened to me. Here I am, and what I've
Yeah.
been able to achieve. So what's happened? Well, that happened September in 2013. Or sorry, October of 2013. Yeah, just late, yeah, early October. And basically, for the next 6 weeks, I was down the dumps. I
Yeah.
was an absolute mess. Um, I just couldn't handle it. A couple of key things I learned. Number one, there's a bunch of people who who will be around and a bunch of people who will forget you. And that's just the nature of it. And it was unfortunate, but it's still hard to go through. And then I was trying to figure out what to do. And so what I wanted to do was to work for a big name tech company in the UK, right? Now, I, why would anyone hire me in the US, right? Well, I mean, seriously, like I wear a sweater vest, I've got a weird accent, slightly weird name, live in London. Like, why? Like, I'm not really candidate number one for like, we got to hire this guy, right? So, and what I did was I basically so I booked a flight December 8th to December 15th, 2013. I booked a hotel and a rented a car. Okay. And 4 weeks before that, for 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. London time, right down to, because that was morning time California, I emailed, Skyped, yeah, that was a thing, and everyone I knew in the Bay Area. And I said, I'm going to be in town and I would please give me some time. Like
I love
30 minutes. All I did.
I'm going to pause you real quick. I love that you realize that your network is your biggest attribute in this situation. If you don't reach out, nobody knows your situation. And you took a risk, right? To book a flight and a hotel with a small part of the severance that was remaining that you've got to last. You don't know how long that
Yeah.
severance is going to last, right? You don't know when the next job's coming.
And by the way, like I mean, I'm going to be honest. I was applying for roles, not, a couple of levels. I'm just a work.
Anyone that wants to talk to me, I'm
I
going to
was just
speak
like,
to.
and in the UK, it wasn't happening. I was like talking to recruiters and like, oh, I don't know about the market, etc. And I was like, hey, man, I used to be CIO, etc. So yeah, it really impacted me, right? And so I was like, I just need to go for the win, right? So I was the product, I was the SDR, and I was the AE, right?
Love
And
it.
my objective was, so to give you some context, I booked 42 meetings.
Wow.
Okay. So I didn't have a Google Calendar, none of that sort of stuff. I basically printed out a piece of a calendar, a week calendar on a piece of paper. And all I was doing is sorting it because a time zone thing and you don't want to get all the other messed up. I was literally at 42 meetings. Okay. And the
Oof.
first meeting, by the way, was on Sunday night. I arrived at 5 p.m. from the British Airways flight. I think British Airways United. By the way, it's the first time I ever filled an immigration form where I didn't know what the occupation was. That
Yeah.
was hurtful. That piece, that actually hurt me the most because you're like occupation and you're like,
Job seeker.
Looking.
you know, you know, numbnuts, like, like complete, useless, basically, non-productive member of society. Uh,
Not paying tax.
I mean, like, just lost cause, right? And you're landing, right? And the guy at immigration says, are you here for work or for personal? And I said, yeah, I'm here for personal, but I'm meeting with a bunch of friends and meeting with as many business contacts I can. They're like, okay, done, right? So first meeting, and by the way, here's a lesson learned from the struggle piece. Like you have to make the ask,
Yeah.
right? Like don't hesitate. Okay. People don't know the story about me and Craig Sergi. Craig just reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you," and I was like, "Hey, look, I'll talk to you too." And here we are, good old friends, basically. But I
Yeah.
booked 42 meetings. Okay. Now I'll give you some context. So going a little bit long on this. I apologize. Um, and so basically all I did was, and I didn't have any aspect of distance, by the way, right? So I was like, oh yeah, I'll take a 1 p.m. meeting in Mountain View, and then I'll take a 1:30, 2 p.m. meeting in San Francisco. No big deal, right? Oh no, sorry. And then, I'll take the 4 p.m. meeting in Sunnyvale. And like, I just didn't, no frame of reference,
Well,
right?
and then 2013, you're still map questing, right?
Oh,
You're still printing off direct. You're not,
I'll tell you the worst product that iPhone came up with, iPhone 4. And guess who's the idiot who had the iPhone 4? Yours truly. Terrible battery power. That big freaking thing, like the USB. It was I honestly, I was just, it was painful. I freaking kept it on 24-hour charge. It was like maddening. I was like, what is this thing? Anyway, so yeah, I was map questing it. Luckily, a lesson learned, just be good to the people around you, and hopefully that will reciprocate in the longer term. A guy called Pablo Doyen, who I will be eternally grateful for, used to be part of my team, used to be based in San Francisco. He decided to leave and was worked at a company called Qualys. And so he emailed me and said, look, you're going to be in town. Why don't you meet with the CIO or CEO of Qualys? I was like, I'll happily meet with anyone. I met with the late Philippe Corto, rest his soul in peace, for breakfast on a Wednesday morning. Uh, 45 minutes breakfast in, he says, "Hey, look, really enjoyed the conversation. Come back to the office right now." I was like, "Okay, I've got a slot, no problem." Came to the office, met with the now CEO of Qualys, Sumedh Thakur, who was VP of engineering at the time. He introduced me to a member of his team, Bharat Shah, who's another VP of engineering at a startup right now. Like, I'm giving you names of people I respect who've known.
Yeah.
So that's part of my indicating that. It's not just like, oh, I met with somebody. Like, these are people who had impact in my life. Okay.
Yeah.
No matter small. Grade 3 conversations basically said, "Oh, could you come tomorrow morning?" And I was like, and I've kind of put a stop to it. I was like, "Listen, I don't even live here. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what you know, like, I don't know why you want to talk to me." And they're like, "Don't worry about that. Like, well, let's just talk." Came at 7 a.m. the next day. The entire executive team at Qualys was there to interview me.
Oh,
Okay. And I basically did that. And that built my confidence. Job or no job, the fact is, I walked out of that knowing that basically I'd created an opportunity, right?
yeah.
I was the SDR. My objective was to fill up that calendar. And I basically, if somebody was not available, and I'd say, who else can you introduce me to?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They were like, I remember one guy who was a really good friend of mine, and he was like, "I'm not in town, but meet with my brother." I was like, "I'll meet with you, bro. No problem." I met
Love
with
it.
him because he was in education, and he'd be like, "Actually, you should meet with the other folks," basically. So, other lesson learned. You just don't know when you don't know, right? You need to be able to connect a bunch of people up. Yesterday, I received an email, one of several I've received from, as a VC, you meet with a bunch of companies, and there's a lot of companies I get excited about, I can't invest in. But I refer them to a lot of my VC friends who it's a better fit. And I got an email yesterday to say, "Thank you very, very much for all that you do for founders. We just got a lead term sheet from the investor." And that investor also emailed me and said, "Thank you for basically referring this founder." Right.
Love
So
it.
anyway, so three weeks after those meetings, my confidence a little bit went back to the UK. I got a phone call and said, "Would you like to be the first CIO of Qualys?" And I
Wow.
said, "I will be the first CIO." I said, "Would you consider moving to the Bay Area?" I said, "I'll be on the next flight. See you on January 5th."
Just keep saying yes. Keep saying
Yeah,
yes.
January 5th, 2015, started at Qualys, landed United, seat 42B, right in the middle, right at the back. Classic. Absolute classic. They're willing to pay for me to commute for the first 6 months, but of course it's going to be economy, and I'm going to be in the back. And stayed at the Hyatt House in Belmont. But
Oh, love it.
best thing I've ever done is to basically just go for it. And they said, "Look, you have to apply for, immigration, all the other stuff." I said, "I'll go through it. No problem. Done. Right? I'll figure this piece out." And that's what I did. 2014. Right? And so now, literally, that was in January of 2014. I started. Sorry, 2014, January of 2014. And yeah, I'm just celebrating my, in fact, 10-year
Yeah.
anniversary. So
Yeah.
here we are.
And it's funny because a lot of the times when we speak to people in the community, etc., and a lot of this, obviously, we're both based in Los Gatos, and we coach in the area, and there's a lot of this psychological side of it as well. We have young children. 11 is my eldest, and 9 is my youngest, and building in that innate of you always say yes until you say no,
Mhm.
or they say no. Right, just keep moving forwards. It may be difficult, it may be tough. You may need to find another way around. You just keep saying yes until you say no or they say no. It's just building that. And I don't know how to categorize it either. And you've done it, Chad's done it, I've done it. How you just keep moving forwards. And no's not really a word either in the context of things. You just keep manipulating, moving, talking, traveling, whatever it is to get to where your destination is.
Resilience, right? So that
Yeah.
that aspect is, look, I was born in Pakistan. At the age of 2 months, my dad got a job in Egypt. I lived in Cairo for several years. I then moved to London. My dad got a job then in Kenya, in East Africa. Okay, so went from having, you know, M&M's, Kit Kat, Coca Cola, Cherry Coke, Diet, Dr Pepper to one television channel. Okay, in Nairobi, and nothing. Okay, yeah, like, I mean, I know you're like saying, "Wow, this guy really got his priorities straight." But when you're 12 years old, that's what your priorities are, right?
Yeah.
Like, just, and lost all my friends, started again, etc. Like, and then, went through a whole bunch of trials and tribulations there. My dad's business went up and down, and it was a whole, family issues that all came with that, basically. And then I went back to London for university after I graduated and did my A levels, graduated high school, etc. But the reality is, my entire life has been a large struggle, right? Um, and the lessons that I had to learn, as hard as it has been, is that you have to be able to figure out what the next step is,
Yeah.
right? The goal, like, hey, I want to do all of this stuff. That those dreams are important, right? That's important. But the moment you feel a little bit, like, actually just take a step back and say, what is the next step
Yeah.
that I have to take, right? How do I move forward, right? Now, people ask me this question. They're like, well, how do you think about this, and how do you think about founders and companies and all the other stuff? And people come to me for advice all the time, and I'd be able to do it. And I have one critical piece of advice, which is that you are, as human beings, we are able to dream and then some. We're like, hey, we want to achieve this, we want to be able to go this, etc. And those our dreams are intangible, right? Like, can't touch them. We don't know. Like, it's a visual, right, in our head basically. And we don't get stopped from dreaming. Our fears are also intangible.
Yeah.
But why do they stop us? Right? Why do you all of a sudden get into a place you're like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do. Why? Right? Now, it's easier said than done, but that's where you need to refactor. And from my standpoint, you have to basically say, what are the steps I need to take forward? I was down for 6+ weeks. I have no idea. Seriously, I was applying for roles. Like, I think back, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell was I thinking? Right. And I had to go for it. The other aspect is you have to know that you went for the win,
Yeah.
right? You have to say to yourself, I've gone for the win. I gave it my best shot. And sometimes it's not even my best shot, but I have to give it a shot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And salespeople are greater. They're like, no holds barred. I'm just gonna go for it and basically try and do that. But there's something to be said about the fact that you have to say, look, I don't want to live my life in regret. That's how I made the shift into venture. I'll tell you about that story as well. But I think that those are key things I would basically.
Yusuf, as you went through that, one thing that really hit is just those relationships. And you talk about the intangibles of dreams, and you don't know what the future holds, but you keep giving 100%. A lot of people don't understand those relationship sides. You never know when that phone call is going to be needed, or when somebody's going to give you that phone call, and how you treat people throughout. A lot of outsiders see Silicon Valley as a ruthless place of
It is.
multi-hour days of trying to get ahead and claw and scrape. But I think
Yeah.
you touched on a fundamental, the valley is a small place, the tech industry is a small place. Treating people the right way is the right path.
I couldn't agree more. I don't know whether I'm a weirdo in the bunch, right? That's just how I operate. Okay. But the lesson I learned from my life, and there are no shortage of hardship that I've gone through. There's been a bunch of rigor that I've had to go through, and I will tell you for a fact that there were a few people that helped me along the way. Okay, that has never escaped me. Okay, I did not have half of my tuition my final year of university. I worked 3 jobs to pay for college in my first year. In my second last year, I didn't. And some guy I was working at the company I was a summer intern at, got to know me, etc. And as we got to know, he was like, "Okay, what do you need? And you can pay me back." Right? To this day, like, if I, like, that is a name that I will always like. That person individual helped me. When I left Qualys to think about what I wanted to do next, I had no shortage. I had quite a few people. Sean Green, one of the greatest human beings. He was a guy at NetSuite who was an account executive. Like, let me give you, let me show you the gem. Okay, I left. I was his customer. I was leaving. He has no vested interest. In fact, he's losing out. He's like, I've lost an executive contact. He was the first person who emailed me and said, "Where can I connect you? What can I do to help?" To this day, I will make sure, like, that is like. And so and just that gesture alone, the fact that he was able to get me an interview and get me on the road, that means a ton of me. So, to go back to Chad, these relationships are important. I've helped dozens of people get jobs. A bunch of them don't even know I was a referral. I've had dozens of companies who've got funded.
Okay. And they do know the referral because the VC need to know that I wasn't just passing on. But I believe that if you are one of the things that has made, I think, this industry, and it does get maligned, and by the way, fairly in a lot of cases, okay? I get that. There's a bunch of stuff that this industry has not done well. And that's a whole separate podcast, and there's no shortage of conversation. I get that. But saying that, I believe in a couple of key things. One is that if you are nothing in civilization has been done by one single individual. It has been done by a collective of folks. Okay, so we take that lesson at large, and we're able to basically build it in our own ecosystem, community, town, industry, company, firm, startup, whatever it is. Somewhere down the line, the net result of that, as a cumulative, will be positive,
Yeah, I
right?
think you step on a big point, the community side of it. And I was talking about the emotional state of it as well, right? You feel down, things are going sideways, whatever. But we were talking about this to one of the baseball coaches, a pitching coach, Thomas at Stanford, about flow state. Even though you're down, but if you still do the right things at the right time, treat the people, the community aspect of it, that flow state goes in and your brain starts going at a different level again, right?
Yeah.
You make those 42 meetings, you make this, you have those. You got it, but if you don't get back into that flow state, you're then in trouble. That's when you need that community to drag you out and get your momentum going. So that emotional state is huge. And I think we have that a lot in the valley as well.
Here's the thing. Here's a news flash for you. Goals are supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
Like, like, if they were easy, then there wouldn't be goals, would they?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you talk about again, we talk about it in the sports world all the time. Like just talking to my kids about it, talent will get you so far, but work ethic will get you further.
Yeah.
Someone will outwork talent every single time. You
I
have
think
to
what's
work it.
important, Craig, is really important, Chad. Like, and what you're doing is really, I love, both podcasts and the thought processes, is understanding people's stories, whatever they are, not just mine, but that helps a dimension in our society, which is much required. Like, we need that,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's like important. And so that's part of how you build a community is you ask the question, not just, hey, what do they do and where do they work? Is like, what does this person believe? What do they need? What is their story?
Yeah.
And that genuineness and authenticity, I think that moves the needle. And I try and basically practice it and make sure that it is kind of true to myself. But that helps build a genuine community and the ability for people to collaborate. No question in my mind.
And I think a lot of people assume that you've gotten to a level like somebody is a CEO because they were born to be a CEO. They have this quality about them. And sure, there are those skill sets, but a lot of us don't know what the heck we're doing on a day to day basis. But it relies on everything we just talked about to just figure it out. And if you have the attitude of figuring it out, then you appear that you should be a VP, you should be a CEO, you should be a CIO. What was your kind of uncomfortable moments as you go through in these different roles and when you kind of look around saying, "Oh, I better figure it out. I better get on my game."
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is you have to be. It, I mean, at least in my industry, anyway. I think you have to be intellectually curious. Like, if you don't have that, I think it's very difficult to be. I mean, look, there's a bunch of luck. Sure, luck has a part to play in all of our stories, right? But I think you have to be intellectually curious, and that requires you to actually understand. One of the things I did as a CIO, which I take great pride in, is I understood every aspect of the business that I was part of. I did not shy away from that. There's a lot of CIOs, no disrespect, man, will not do that. There's a bunch of CXOs that won't do that in a bunch of companies, right? And I did that because I thought that was, in my viewpoint, that was the best way for me to be the best CIO for that company because I could make the best decisions because I had the full picture. You got to understand the picture.
Well, and
You
and
have,
and I think you've built that, right? You mentioned it a few times. As you were getting out to the US, you were your own SDR.
yeah,
So you went all the way down the sales pipeline, and we're just giving it the acronym that we use now, but you went all the way down to what's the starting job of a salesperson? It's generally an SDR, right? Or a BDR.
yeah,
They're making calls, they're learning the language so for you to go as a CI or a C-suite to then realize I need to actually know what we're doing all the way down in the trenches so I can do my job better as well. And So, I know, you know, you're giving us the example of you learning the whole bit, but dude, you've been doing it since day one.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You
One
know,
of the things, so even in my CIO role, right, as I became a CIO, the way I became a CIO was I am the accidental CIO. I was supposed to be in banking and finance, like 90% of my other friends at King's College London. Like I summered, my summer job was at a tech startup. It's well publicized company called QXL, where I was moving boxes.
yeah,
Okay, like that was but I was like, wow, internet, online auction, venture capital funding. What the hell is this, right? And that's kind of a big deal. It's pretty interesting. But I got involved in technology because I played every single role or every single aspect of the IT team, data, IT support. I mean, I joke, right? Like, hey, by the way, no ticket left behind.
yes.
Like, I'm the guy who was basically, I worked in help desk, I worked in systems, I sat down at 2 o'clock in the morning when we were looking to do a big release, understanding what Oracle upgrades were, right? Sitting down at the DBA guys. So that allowed me to understand. People said, a lot of people who cannot get to a CIO role, even though they've been in an IT organization, is because they haven't had experience in some of the other departments.
Yeah.
I said, you don't have to have experience. You have to have an appreciation, understanding of what they do.
Yeah.
Right. And that requires the ability to do it. With venture, same thing. If you looked at my LinkedIn profile, I'm not the number one choice to come into a venture firm. Until you meet me, until you meet with founders, until you meet with CIOs, until you meet with other VCs who are like, wait a second, this chap happens to meet with more founders every weekend than we do, right?
Oh yeah.
He's basically been an early customer of companies like Zoom and MoveWorks and Datadog and Slack.
Well,
What's
and
that all about?
let me pause you there, mate. They still call on you for advice. So
Some do,
you were there since day one. You believed in their product. You
yes.
may not invest in them. You may not do any of that.
Yeah.
But I'm personal to a personal touch on this. You will meet me in Mountain View on Saturday morning at Starbucks for an hour, and we
Right.
can talk about anything. We talk about cricket or we can talk about tech. It doesn't matter. But you're always the thing that I really appreciate about you is you're always available when you're available. You will listen.
I have factored in, I have figured out the right way to be able to balance personal time, family time, and be able to basically move things further forward. And and I've been able to do that. The other aspect is you've got to do what you absolutely enjoy, right? And if you and that first of all, I enjoy it, but the second is I know I'm moving the needle forward. I'm moving things forward for somebody else to do it. So 10 years, so far, every Saturday and Sunday morning, if you have been a founder that wanted advice or guidance or feedback, I couldn't be the customer of 50 startups, but I could happily give you feedbacks to why I think it's interesting or not. I just did that because I could, because I thought it was the right thing, because I thought founders really required it, that they weren't getting that from folks, and I enjoyed doing it selfishly. I was learning as well, no problem at all,
Are you
and
the
that
original
allowed me to be in
meetup?
the industry.
You're the original meetup before meetup was a thing.
Wouldn't go that far. Like I said, it was there's no shortage of companies that the founders took some feedback on the product feedback or took a bunch of introductions, and that's a great story. And if I can help, I'm super happy to do that. But it's it keeps the muscle going and being able to actually understand where things are moving. It's also very honestly like part of it is like, yeah, I'm happy to take a pitch, but I'm also learning. Like most people forget that, right? It's actually a two-way exchange. You're like, really, you're really you. I mean, in some cases it was kind of crazy. It was like, wow, you actually believe that. Right? In other cases, you're like, wait a second, what? Sorry, what was that? They're like, oh, actually, and then the most insightful ones is what new are you learning, right? And when I basically spoke to some of the founders, they were like, oh yeah, actually, here's the problem here. You're like, whoa, I did not realize that. And then I'd go back. That actually made me a better CIO because I was able to learn about issues that I, would not have normally basically done.
So we likely have a mix of people listening now that are either sitting in their big company roles that have hesitated to start a company or to join a smaller company to take a risk. And you also have founders or early stage that are listening to this saying, I don't know if I can keep going. It's not as successful as I thought it was. It's not as lucrative. I'm in the valley. We got funding, but damn, this is hard. What's your advice for that spectrum of individual that is looking to figure out what's next?
Very simple. Number one is make a decision. Okay. Indecision kills you, right? And as Craig knows super well, basically, time kills deals. Okay. So make a decision first and foremost. That's like the objective is to make a decision, right? Rather than so that's that. It sounds obvious, sounds crazy. You're like, really? I was like, yeah, it is. Second, honestly, you are allowed to have an off day. You are allowed to have an off week. In fact, I will grant you that you are allowed to have an off month and an off year or two. Okay. Third, it is completely your choice, right? I'm saying these things like you have to understand. My data point is like hundreds of founders. Okay, Saturday, Sunday, like I've been hearing this, and so I've had to collate this, and I'm kind of sharing it from my standpoint. Is ultimately it's free will. No, like there is. Here's 2 points. One is there's a whole world outside of tech. Okay, welcome to the bubble, but figure your head out. There's a bunch of people, we're just another bunch of folks trying to make it in the world. Okay. In the bigger scheme of things of where we are, like I love what you do. I love what I do. It's great. I do it with the people. I could have worked with a bunch of other firms. I chose to do it here with the people at the stage, etc., etc. It's free will. Okay. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is just remember in the bigger scheme of things, right? Think about what the best thing is to be able to move things further forward, right? And the other aspect is, yeah, you actually have you done everything possible until that you've made that decision, right? If you haven't, then you're not doing it justice. Like you have to be able to say, I've asked these 5 people, I got no. I asked, like, if you don't get funded, you don't get funded. The market tells you your product's too early or you weren't very good pitching. Like it's no, and by the way, no big deal. 80% of startups fail, right? Like that's just the nature of the industry. One thing I would say is people say, well, should I be founding a company and all the other stuff? I hear this all the time. And I actually say, don't do it. Okay. Let me tell you why. One of the things I've realized is the founders, if you want to be a founder, you don't ask. You just go. Right. You're like, you don't need anyone's validation. Right? With respect, do you think Garrett Camp and Travis Kalanick were like, how many taxi cabs, etc.? They were like, no, we want to build a cool product that basically does this, and they formed with Uber. You think Mark Zuckerberg was at Harvard and he was like, let me look at the data that tells me what the market looks like for social media? No. He was like, I'm going to go basically do this. You think Larry and Sergey did that? It was not a data-driven decision. It was we think there's something here. We have conviction. We're going to go ahead and basically build this. Amazing. You can agree and disagree with them all you want. But the core objective that I would say is if you are able to make a decision, if you know that you've exhausted all the options, if you know that you have asked for help, like those are data points that allow you to say, maybe I need to change direction. Maybe I need to pivot. Maybe I need to think about hiring. Maybe I need to think about firing. Maybe I need to but decisions is the output because that will help you.
I love that. And I know we're just wrapping right now at the, we're past the bottom of the hour, but I think on those points, that's a great place to end. And, Yousuf, I don't want to pitch you, people can find you on LinkedIn, and I know the type of person you are. You're happy to help anyone. So, yeah. I don't want people bombarding your LinkedIn because I want my own personal space there. No, I'm joking. But Yousuf can be found on LinkedIn, and let me just I will give you a quick pitch. Some of the speeches you do with some of the VC firms that you help and partner. I know the one in the Pakistan one I've been listening to. The articles you write in LinkedIn all have nuggets of absolute wisdom. So my advice would be go check out Yousuf on LinkedIn, go read his articles, jump on some of the podcasts you've done in the past. And if I can help connect the dots, I am more than willing. We did it with Robert as well, with a few people that listened. Happy to help. But Yousuf, I appreciate the time, or we appreciate your time. Can't wait to grab a coffee.
Look forward to it. Chad, great too. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Greg.
Absolutely.
This is great. This is really important. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Yousuf.
Everybody listening, please find us on Instagram, the Struggle Bubble Pod. We are actively engaged in all the conversations and looking forward to bringing even more guests throughout and continuing the conversation. Thank you to our guest, Yousuf Khan. Craig, we're going to talk about that stress ball that you've had in your hand to make sure everything's okay. We'll talk about that in the next episode. Thanks, everybody.